Okay, everyone. I think we're ready to get started whenever the group is. Okay. Welcome everyone to meeting 2 of Percy Warner and Vaughn's Gap. This is part of NDOT's traffic calming program. For those just stepping in, my name is David Greaves. I work for Kinley Horn. We're helping NDOT administer this program. And like I said, this is the second of 2 meetings. So I see a lot of familiar faces from those who came to the first meeting several months ago. We're going to go ahead and recap some of the information that we went over because I do see some new folks that have arrived, but we'll keep that a little more brief. Last time we spent quite a bit of time on the just sort of general information in the traffic calming program. Today we'll sort of cover that quickly and then spend more of our time looking at the design that we produced and hopefully we'll install. So what is traffic calming? Essentially the neighborhood street traffic calming, that's what NSTC stands for. We focus on residential streets. So Percy Warner, Vaughn's Gap, those are both streets that mainly have houses, condos, apartments on them. Really don't look at highways or arterials as candidates for our measures. We like to focus on physical solutions. So we'll do striping and we'll do signs, but oftentimes those aren't quite enough to prevent the most motivated of speeders. So if anyone has seen speed cushions around Nashville before, that's usually what we lean on pretty heavily as a basis for our design. And the primary goal with this program is just reducing speed. So we have 3 E's in traffic calming. That's education, enforcement, and engineering. Education is kind of what we're doing now. We also have quite a bit of information online on NDOT's website if you'd like to know more about different tools, other streets that have received traffic calming. They have a lot of really good information about the program broadly and how it works, but I'm here to tell you specifically about your street, Percy Warner and Vaughn's. Enforcement, that's the part that NDOT really doesn't have a lot of control over. They don't have the ability to write tickets or really issue any citations for people speeding. And our partners at the Metro Police Department, they have a lot on their plate. So we wish they could be on every street, taking the radar, speed readings, writing tickets. That would be awesome. But unfortunately, they often have a bigger fish to fry. So that's where engineering comes in. NDOT thankfully does have pretty much full authority over the roads that we work with in Nashville. And we like to solve problems with engineered solutions that are permanent and known to be effective. So that's why they hire folks like Harrison and I to help them do those designs. So to kind of circle back to the speed reduction goal, this is really this slide that drives it all. Ultimately, our main goal is to just make sure that everyone can live a long and productive life. We really hate to see crashes where pedestrians or cyclists or other drivers are injured and got killed. And studies have shown, this one I believe came from the Federal Highway Administration, that the more a person is speeding, the less likely it is that if they were to hit somebody, that they would make it out alive. And that much is pretty intuitive, but the real kicker is this like 25-mile-an-hour zone. You do see the vast majority of people will be okay, whereas that drops off quite severely as we get up to the 45-mile-an-hour. Now I know that some of you were talking before the meeting. Both of these streets, we have measured plenty of people going at that 45-mile-an-hour range and higher. So that's really the main driver of these streets and why it was chosen to receive traffic calming. So about the program broadly, it's a really high demand program. So currently, well, as of February 2023, that was quite a while ago now, there were 464 live applications in the system, and we only chose 26 in the winter selection. So You were, one of the few that were selected. We have been working on speeding this program up to try to, tackle this problem more quickly. But I guess all this is to just say, congratulations on being accepted, even if it was for reasons that we don't like. So the traffic calming program is pretty limited in its scope. We don't have the ability to do a whole lot of different things. So we like to refer everyone to Hub Nashville. Just make sure everyone's aware. This is a really good resource to let NDOT or any other arm of the metro government know about problems you're seeing in your neighborhood. So if there's anything from tree branches blocking the road, people parked illegally, even roadkill, this app has a lot of things, a lot of resources, and we just want to make sure everyone is aware of it. There's the information about Hub Nashville. So zooming into Percy Warner and Vaughn's Gap, these are two pretty long streets relative to most traffic calming projects we do, and we lump them together because they do interact so closely, crossing each other. And I think a lot of the cut-through traffic that you all are probably experiencing, those are very intertwined. This is actually a screenshot of NDOT's traffic calming tracker. That's a GIS tool available on the website. I believe it's Nashville.gov/traffic-calming, but a Google search would get you there very quickly if that's not the actual address. So lines in purple are streets that have applied but have not yet been selected. Lines in green are those that have been selected. So these two streets, we will definitely do something. Maybe it's the design we presented today, maybe it's something lesser, but we recognize that there is a serious need for measures to be taken to curb this problem that you all are experiencing. So let's zoom in a little bit. We're going to talk about what we're proposing for this street in particular, and the main measure that we're proposing is speed cushions. We did talk about these quite a bit in the last meeting, so I'll do like a quicker overview of how they're supposed to work. But basically, they're modular. One piece is about 1.5 feet by maybe 6 feet long, something like that. So they kind of just get stuck together, bolted to the ground. And they're really only about 3 inches high. They kind of seem larger than that if you're driving over them at speed. But if you were going like a healthy 25, 30 miles an hour, they're not severe enough that they're really going to cause you a whole lot of trouble. But the thought is that if you were going faster, the discomfort ramps up from there. A lot of people will ask why we don't do speed tables. So a speed table is one that crosses the entire road. And that's really for emergency vehicle access. So the way these are designed, they sort of just barely hug that threshold of being wide enough that a car can't easily put both of their wheels through the gaps. But a fire truck, they may hate it a little bit, but they're mostly going to be able to go through at the speed they need to be going to reach emergencies on time. How is that possible? It's going to slow my car down. Yeah, so emergency vehicles, ambulances, fire trucks, they often have wider wheelbases. So they'll be able to kind of hit that angled part on the edges of the cushions. Not saying that they can completely dodge it, but they're able to withstand it a little easier than a smaller vehicle might. Yes. Yeah, that's a great question. And that actually does tie into something we talked about last time. On Percy Warner Boulevard, one measure that's been taken already is edge line narrowing. So essentially, we've taken lanes that were, I think, like 14 feet wide and made them 10. So now we have two 10-foot wide lanes in the center and then two parking lanes off to the side. So it is a really great place to ride bikes. I've done it myself plenty of times. It is not actually a technical bike lane. So essentially what we're going to do is have the cushions spread out such that they're extending all the way across the road. The good news is this doesn't really disrupt parking. Like I said, they're 3 inches high, so people park on them. They can, and that doesn't really bother cars too much. But we do really seriously try to prevent people from going around in gaps and things like that. Yeah, that is true. Why don't we put a pin in that until we look at the actual detail of what we're proposing on Percy Warner, and I can kind of speak to how we've addressed that concern. So this slide is to essentially just explain and validate why these speed cushions do work to slow cars down. The average speed you can see goes down by upwards of 9 miles per hour, and then the 85th. For anyone who doesn't know, that is a statistical measure that essentially says 15% of people are going faster than any given number. So that comes down even more than that, like a 12 mile an hour reduction. Okay, so now the part I was referencing, these are the design plans that we have given to NDOT. They'll be posted to the website, and everyone will be able to look at them at the time or before they're submitting their votes. So the next section of the meeting, we're basically just going to dig into these, answer any questions you all have, and sort of dive into the details of how our design is supposed to work. This slide, this is kind of the cover page, the big overview. We usually don't have to zoom out this far, but like I said, you have two pretty long roads. So we've got quite an expanse of area to cover in sheets. But essentially, we're going to start up here toward Harding Pike, head down this section, then move over to Vaughn's Gap and talk about the cushions that are along there, moving from left to right or south to north in this case. And then we'll return to the eastern side of Percy Warner Boulevard along there. So there isn't too much to talk about besides the fact that we know Percy Warner is very wide. We're proposing 4 cushions across the road at each of these spots. Usually we get away with like 2 or 3, but like I said, we really do want to make sure that people don't have the opportunity to drive off the road or go around the cushions, because that is something that people will do if the opportunity exists. Yes. Yeah, so that often becomes kind of a challenging puzzle of sorts. So I'll sort of start with our constraints and our goals, and then go from there. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So the question is, how far apart are the cushions from each other? On streets like these, we shoot between 400 and 600 feet apart. In our last meeting, we heard a lot of feedback that suggested that more is what most residents wanted to see. So here we've sort of tried to lean on the 400 to 500 foot spacing. And studies conducted by the Federal Highway Administration and their associated research institutes have determined that as kind of the sweet spot of cushions where people slow down before they hit them, and then they will start accelerating back up to where they may prefer to be driving. But by the time you're speeding for real, you've already gotten to another cushion. Yeah, so that's probably another. Why don't we do this? We'll skip to the last page, which sort of like a bird's eye view of the plans, and I can talk to that. So cyclists, really easy. You can either, if there's no cars parked here, go all the way to the edge of the road and use this 2.5 foot wide gap. Or if you're in the lane, you can use the 3 foot wide gap between these cushions. Yeah, I guess. I'll just point. So this is the section that we're using for Percy Warner because it's very wide. I think upwards of 38 pavement. So this is the bird's eye view of the road. This is the center line. These 2.5 feet wide gaps are all the way at the edges. That's sort of to ensure that people aren't tempted to drive their car, off the road. You'd have to go like pretty far into someone's yard to really draw a cushion in. I'm not saying no one would do it. We'll have signs there, and they would really be.
But there's adequate space there for bicycles or walkers.
There is. Yes. Yeah. Exactly. So yeah, to answer the point, there's space to walk and bike. It's also totally doable to walk or bike over these. That's correct. You mean like walking? Yeah. You can also walk on the speed cushions. They're made of rubber and they're not like slippery or anything. It would just. Yeah. So these white triangles that we're seeing, they are reflective. So if you're driving on the road, you'll see your headlights kind of shining back at you. We also put signs to warn drivers. So hopefully these won't surprise anyone who is speeding. I can say I do bike on streets with these all the time, and they're really not too much of a trouble. Any other questions while we're here about kind of how they work in relation to the width of the street? Great. Yeah, we're not removing any parking spaces by doing this. We did kind of consider like what does it take to leave more space for other modes, and it seemed like this approach was what most people were excited about. So Vaughn's Gap is a pretty similar scenario. It does have a little bit of a range of pavement widths. So over in the, I believe the southern side, we have pavement wide enough for like a 3-cushion configuration. So you'll see 2 cushions with those reflective arrows, and then one with that, kind of yellow double center line printed onto it with reflective markings. And then as it gets a little narrower after Percy Warner Boulevard going north, we were only able to fit in 2 cushions there, but 21 feet of pavement is not enough room to go around a cushion on. So we're confident that this arrangement will be fairly effective in slowing people down. So I guess I kind of left the thread of how we choose to space these. 400 to 600 feet is the goal. These do have constraints for grades. So anything that's over like 6-7% of a slope, we don't want to do, because then they do get a little bit more challenging to first see, and then the manufacturer will not support a warranty if these are installed on hills. So for a number of reasons, we're constrained there. We do have, plenty of spots within these boundaries that we were able to fit cushions, but we essentially try to work around those to keep a pretty even spacing and have a nice, even experience. Yes?
Is there any limitation besides this initial
Yeah, there were. None that were as long. So the initial descent is the largest stretch that we were not able to put cushions. There were a few places on Vaughn's Gap as you like kind of go up toward, I think that's a 4-way stop. Yeah. Usually what we have there are like kind of short sections of hill. And in the cases of those, we'll just put one at the top and one at the bottom. And we're not really, throwing out the concept of the design for it. I can kind of go back to this cover sheet and show that we were able to maintain a really nice even spacing along this stretch. Here we were slightly further apart due to the hills. This is that big descent. I think we're, oh yeah, I know. Sorry about that, y'all. I'll step over here. This lower stretch is the flattest. We were able to get a really like close ideal spacing there. Up here was a little more of a challenge due to the grades, but essentially I just stuck them everywhere that it did flatten out just enough to get a cushion in. We also coordinate around driveways, so we never want to put cushions like right in front of somebody's driveway. We usually keep a clearance of like 15 feet or so. That lets you kind of back out and go forward without having to run over it every day, which is kind of a pain. And then Vaughn's Gap, the only notable gap we see is here and here. These are both four-way stops, so we don't put speed cushions really close to those because it's understood that people generally are stopping anyway. Yeah, I know. Never say they always stop at stop signs because I think we all know they don't. But yeah, that's pretty much all I've got on the design. I'm happy to answer any and all questions that we have. Yeah, yeah. So essentially the way the signs work is we never want anyone to be surprised by these. So if there is a set of cushions like right after a road that you might turn on to Percy Warner, we'll have signs. If we have a stretch where you're going to go over 4 cushions and no one could possibly get to that middle set without first going over 1, we will just say there's a series of speed cushions ahead and not clutter up everyone's yards unnecessarily. So that's usually how we handle that. In certain cases, we'll install signs if we ever feel like there are special safety concerns, like maybe a sharp curve or something like that. But we didn't really have any unique cases on this particular stretch. Yes. No, that's a great question. So the way yellow signs like these work are they're warnings, and they're recommending for comfort's sake that you go 25 or 20 miles an hour. It's kind of like when you see like a curve in the road, you'll see a sign that says, "Hey, there's a curve coming up. Maybe go 30 instead of 35." So the speed limit will remain, what it is today. I believe it's 25. Oh, it's 30. Okay. Excellent. So the speed limit will, got it. Yeah. Point being, we're not changing the speed limit. Yes. Yeah. Forward. Yes. Yeah. So, yeah, there are plenty of streets in Nashville that are just too hilly to have a regular implementation of speed cushions. There we have to turn to what I would consider lesser measures. So we can do like radar feedback signs where you drive past it, it blinks at you if you're going too fast, things like that. It'd be nice if we could put some sort of like vertical disruptive measure everywhere. The problem is it takes a situation that's maybe not as like easy to drive on and makes it just a little bit harder. And the last thing NDOT wants to do is make a road more dangerous inadvertently. Yes.
I wonder if this will make a big difference in the people that cut through our neighborhood, going to work every morning, school and all that stuff. I was thinking, what? There's some people that hate driving over those. I would think they could take another route.
On Vaughn's Gap, they're going to put in sidewalks, extend it. So that's the sidewalks and it's going to be done at the same time.
I doubt it. Yeah. We're able to install these with or without sidewalks, and they don't really prevent one or the other.
Sidewalk work is at the end of this year,
Good.
finished by next year. I don't know if that's.
I imagine it's 15 days, but pretty quick, no?
It depends when you start the clock. We can get to that in a later slide. Yes.
Are you going to do anything special on the areas where it was like Park Avenue? There are several streets that go into Percy.
Yeah, so
What are you going to do about that?
the way that this program works is we choose specific streets to install traffic calming on. So there are often streets adjacent to them or ones in the neighborhood that might also use traffic calming, or maybe they need it as well. We encourage anyone to apply.
I'm referring to, I saw it open 42nd Avenue. But it's got 42nd Avenue. It's got
Oh, yeah.
Is that going to be around? Is that going to be
No,
around as well, or-
we have not proposed those here. I think what you might be referring to are what we call curb extensions or bulb outs.
Yeah.
Those are designed to take really large intersections, particularly those where there have been like accidents or people have been like taking those turns really hard. We haven't proposed those here because mainly I think our concern here is the speeding and the cut through traffic, and less so kind of dicey turning movements that folks are making.
I remember somebody had said that, they parked the car over there and somebody came out of the side street and ran into somebody's car on Percy Water.
Oh,
And so I thought, well, is this going to be part of it? Apparently,
no, it is not. Unfortunately, I think I've got. So there's a few. I know in the green, you've had your hand up for a while. Yeah. So. Mhm. Yeah, so there are a number of tools in NDOT's toolbox. For the reasons I tried to cover, speed cushions are really what they prefer to start with. They know how to install them, they know they can do it quickly, and they know they work. That's the thinking.
Some people down there screaming.
In the purple in the back, yes, there is. It is unfortunately a very uncertain one. Essentially, so we can come back to design questions as well, but just while we're on the topic, I'll cover this slide. Essentially, application, that's how this all got started. Prioritization and selection, that's when we evaluate all the applications that came in. We measure volumes. That's how many cars are driving on a road, speeds, how fast people are going, and then analyze against a few other variables. Are there schools in the neighborhood? Are there parks that people are walking to? Is there a sidewalk for people to walk on if they do choose to walk? And all those factors kind of roll into a large list of streets that we ultimately take the top contenders and design projects for. We had meeting one back in the spring, so that's where we proposed a concept, talked about speed cushions, sort of educated everyone on what the other options were. We got a lot of feedback that was very positive. Ultimately, our choice to use speed cushions, I thought was affirmed pretty emphatically. And then over the summer, we did our design. So we've been working hard getting this plan refined. We came out and did a site visit, took all the measurements we needed to find where those grades were, the hills, check the pavement widths, kind of drive it ourselves, see how it felt. And now we're here at meeting 2. Next is the ballot, but I want to cover any other questions before we move on. In the red?
I know that other streets have used this design. It would help if we knew where there was a street that has the speed humps that we're going to get, so people can maybe drive on those streets to get a feel about this is what we're going to have on Percy Water or Vaughn's Gap. That's the first question. The second one is, have all the other streets that have gone through this, have they been successful, or are they kind of woodward?
Yeah,
You know?
I do. Well, more or less. So this data, I'm going to have to go back. Yeah, this slide, this is a study that NDOT conducted on their own projects. So there are studies that were performed nationally that suggest that these work, but NDOT decided we really want to know in Nashville's context, our specific solutions, what is the effect? And they didn't study a lot of streets. I think they chose 6 or so to represent them. But ultimately, that's how they have determined that they like this tool. as a solution to speeding. Will you remind me of the second part of your question? Oh, where can we find other projects? Let me,
Wesley used to have one, I think they have it out for Colin.
oh, cool.
There are several streets in Southern Park area.
That's what we second added was.
Yes. In the black?
So, we were talking earlier about the cut throughs that happen.
Mhm.
I see a lot of trucks going through, in the night, during the night on my campus, a lot of delivery trucks, I don't know which.
Mhm.
So are there trucks waiting in the place? And will this become a white loop street?
No, that's an interesting question. So the cushions are designed to handle essentially anything that this world may. You know, I don't think you can, at least not the traffic calming program specifically.
They don't want to travel over speed bumps. Well, that's the whole.
I'm thinking it takes one time. But then figure it out.
Yes. Yeah, let's see. Between Harding. It's to the north, right? Okay, yes. Oh, so on these plans, we've only grabbed the areas that we're showing cushions. So the intersection of I'll have to go to the zoomed out version. This is as good as we get in the 100 scale. But there. Yep. Yeah, so right here's Harding. This is set number 1 of the C cushion if you're traveling south. We will turn into St. Henry after that. There's another one before this paved driveway, and then there's a third as you're traveling up the hill before you get to this 4-way stop. Yep.
Maybe the show is lower on what is going to be in the next. Yeah. But why show us between the,
So I think I had a couple of questions about this slide. What is it? There's one, yes. So, and we, yes.
I was wondering about the noise, like how loud will it be when people go over the bus? We have bedrooms, like,
Yeah.
and that one of them is right in front of our house.
They're pretty quiet. I couldn't like tell you a number of decibels, but there is research that's been conducted to evaluate this concern, and generally the complaints that NDOT gets are not about them being loud.
I want to be sure that I think people are confusing St. Henry School and St. Henry Boulevard or street, whatever it's called, because I think there is some issue with pickup at St. Henry School, picking up children and whatnot, and all of the traffic at, 8 o'clock in the morning and at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and all of that kind of business. But so I think people need to be sure when they're saying St. Henry, we're talking about the street. We're not talking about the school. But if that, okay, well then that needs to be clarified.
So in either case, turning into the school or turning left onto the street, there will be one set of cushions between that and the parting pike.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So this is the next section as we're traveling south. Yes?
Did anybody do a study, because it's already a traffic jam at 8? Now we're gonna throw in 6 or 7 speed bumps.
Mhm.
That's gonna slow that down.
You know,
Which is nice. Mine,
Really where they need to slow down.
so the installation of cushions does not deter people from going the speed limit. If you were driving 30 miles an hour and you went over these, you'd be fine. So we're not really trying to slow traffic down to any further point than we already expect. Sure, if everyone did drive 60 miles an hour on Vaughn's Gap, a lot more traffic would move through there, but that's not really what anyone wants. Oh, sure. Yeah. So we're gonna. Yep. So this is the intersection of Percy Warner Boulevard and Vaughn's Gap Road. Are there any other? Yes.
Are the people that are not at this meeting, are you going to be notifying them that they're going to be-
Yeah. So the communication that goes out.
So they've all been notified through our Facebook page, they've all been notified through postcards sent out. There's been information posted for 6 months about this. Not everybody.
I never got a postcard. Never got one.
Well,
I'm on Facebook, but I didn't know we had a local paper.
Yes.
I'm over too.
one of our community associations.
We might have to save that one for a minute from now. So in terms of notification, that is a concern. No one's car is going to get towed when they install these. Essentially, NDOT's installation crews, if they have somewhere they need to install it and the parked car is blocking, I believe they leave like a note or put out some cones and say, hey, we're about to do this project in a couple days. You know, if you were going to park right here, maybe park right there, something to that effect. So that hopefully is not a huge concern that we're
We
too
also
worried about.
make notification on our national picnic, and we had 1,300 people there who live in this neighborhood, and the notification was given. Drop-off talked about it. There were several things talked about this in particular at that meeting.
I didn't even know we had the first one.
Well, yeah, so.
Can someone ask
First one.
Yeah, we need to keep the Facebook.
Water Parks Community Association.
Well, how about this? I will pass this in. Thank you so much. Anybody, make sure you type that. Well, all right. Okay, thank you so much.
Yes.
How long does it take to actually play two of those down? I don't think it's that.
No, they can do a few a day, I think. Yeah, what's much more, I think so. Yeah, it's a surprisingly arduous process. So they don't just kind of like sit on the ground. Essentially, they're bolted and epoxied into the asphalt concrete. So each one of these cushions is bolted with like 50 or so bolts. So they'll be out there for a little while, drilling holes and lining them all up.
We just had a lot of potholes filled, streets are getting dug up.
Mhm.
Percy Warner's maybe gonna get paid before this happens.
That's a good question. We can check the paving schedule. We don't really like work around the paving because they also have
Want to pay before we put
not necessarily. I see. So what we don't have the ability to do is affect the paving schedule. So they have their own system to figure out, prioritize which roads are really in need of their time. If it's getting in rough shape, the suspicion would be that it's due for paving at some point. Are we ready to move on to the next steps, talking about the balloting, the voting, how all that's going to work?
I would like to say, one of the comments on mine, they are on overhill drive, and we both like also said on cross Kendrick Drive and the ones that on cross Kendrick Drive are the ones that on Percy. So it'd be almost exactly what we don't want to go back to cross. Yeah, overhill and then you want to go to the Nashville TrafficCalming GIS website. Everything that is a blue dash line does have traffic. This is on multiple county.
Thanks. Okay, so this is meeting 2. That's the red circle. And after this, we're going to move on to balloting. So the way that works is we'll get more postcards sent to the address of whoever owns a given property, and that'll come with it.
I know you don't want to hear this, but see, we get postcards. I want to buy your house. Here, call me. And it's a postcard. It goes in the trash.
Mhm.
I'm not saying that your postcard, people saw the postcard, but maybe thought it was something else than what it really is. And maybe they really didn't look at it. And I'm not trying to defend you, but I'm just saying, and I get these in my mail all the time because people want to buy my house.
Well, try and read them before you fill them out.
Well, I've been at every meeting. Give me a break. My point is,
I'm talking to everyone.
yeah,
Read them before
maybe
you
we
fill them
got
out.
it. What I do is stand out in front of my lawn, and when I see a stroller go by, I ask them, do you know about speed humps? Oh, yes, yes, yes. Do you live on Percy Warner? No, I don't, but my mother-in-law does. I said, talk to your mother-in-law. If you want it, she's gonna be the one that votes. So I just use, I hate to say it, I use my mouth because that's the only way we're gonna get people to do it. To say, oh, that's what they have to do? Only one vote per house on Percy Warner and Vaughn's Gap. Am I not correct?
Yes,
Okay.
let me just sort of dig into a couple of the points made there. So agreed, we all get way too much paper mail. I don't like it. But this is really the only way that Metro Nashville has to reach individual property owners. So we are constrained to this format for reaching everyone who needs to vote. What I will do is when I put together these ballot mailers and send them to NDOT, who will then send them out to everyone, I'll also copy your council person, and they'll be able to spread the word, let you all know, hey, just a heads up, next few days you'll be getting some mail to this effect.
Will this go in an envelope or a postcard with ballot?
It is just the postcard itself, so it's the piece of paper. So anyway, y'all be able to communicate amongst yourselves with Facebook, talking to your neighbors, etc. Maybe if you do get a postcard, ask your neighbors, did you also get one? I got one, just a heads up, it's coming, that kind of thing. And we'll hopefully get a lot of participation in the online ballot. So this is what the postcard looks like. The voting is online, so essentially there's a code on there that will verify that your vote is unique. And once those all come in after a 6-week voting period, we'll then be able to count up the votes. If 66% are yes, the ballot passes. If fewer than 66% vote yes, then it will fail, and we'll kind of circle up and try something else.
Do you know how many houses we're talking about? So that,
It's several hundred. I think upwards of 400. I think. Yeah, and the way it. Yeah, so I will say this particular street is really interesting because, yeah. So any residential property votes. So the condos and apartments, like those are included as well. Yes.
So if it does fail, do we go to a plan B, or are we getting to the bottom of the list that we can reapply for something?
No, so usually when ballots fail, what NDOT does is do whatever they can with non-vertical measures. So they won't install cushions or bumps. Those are what are being voted on. They do reserve the right to do striping changes, signage changes, kind of anything outside of the vertical measures.
So what I'm hearing from you, and this is positive from my perspective, but something is going to happen with this selection what?
Yes,
Okay.
of course.
Can you go through the list so that I have a clear understanding? It says residential properties, that's like my house and your house, whatever. There's, churches,
Yes,
so that church is one vote,
correct,
and schools.
correct.
But now, my school, okay, St. Henry is a church and a school, do they get 2 votes?
That would depend on the actual like parcels of land. That's correct.
Okay, I can, all right.
Yeah, so if if one person owns like 5 properties, that one person gets 1 vote.
Well, that's number 3. I'm talking up in front, I'm trying to clarify churches and schools. Does St. Henry have 2 votes? St. Henry School, St. Henry Church? Okay, so their address is Harding, so they don't get a vote. What about Jason?
So there's a couple points to unpack there. We consider a piece of property to be eligible to vote if it has frontage on the road. So anyone who may be addressed on like a side street, but their side yard is on the road we're placing cushions on, we'll send them mail and get
What
them a
about
vote.
the poison?
Oh, you mean like no. So if they don't have a property boundary that touches the right of way that we're talking about, they're not included.
Okay. And please? Well, okay, then vacant properties are ineligible. That means houses for sale don't get a vote.
Not so much. So essentially the tools we have at our disposal when we make this list is Metro Nashville's property records and essentially Google Street View. So
Okay.
if we have a piece of land that has no building on it at all, that's vacant. We
Okay,
don't
and
send
then
them mail.
businesses are ineligible. So right there on the corner of Highway 100 and Vaughn's Gap, all of those businesses on the corner are ineligible.
That's correct.
But all those houses behind them would be. They're not.
No, they're not on the street.
They're behind the street. All of them.
So if a condo complex is surrounded by a piece of property that has frontage on the street, everyone within that piece of property gets a vote. So often that does. Yeah, so if there were a condo complex that had a bunch of condos that doesn't touch Vaughn's Gap or Percy Warner, they wouldn't get a vote. But if they do have property that touches it, we'll send them the ballot mailers. Yes.
Thank you.
To clarify, it's hourly of 65.
66.
Of the votes that are active.
Yes.
So I know if no one knows about it or they don't vote at all, it doesn't have to go actually to the person that actually voted against this or actually voted for it.
Yes.
Can you repeat that? So
Yeah. So essentially, the total votes is just everyone who went online and submitted yes or no. We're not trying to get 66% of 400 yeses before this passes. So if 4 people vote and 3 of them say yes, we'll get traffic calming.
But you have to vote online.
Correct. Oh, actually, no. So you can vote online. You can also call NDOT and tell them what your vote is. Yes. The information to do that will be on the postcards. I don't have the number memorized, but exactly. Yeah. So every vote has an ID associated with it, and that's just to prevent votes that shouldn't be called in or sent in. Of course. Any more questions about how voting works? Yeah.
Thank you, Jessica. Targeting the Percy Warner, there's an apartment complex directly to the right, with this multi-family rental complex. With each resident there, see the vote.
No, so this gets kind of tricky. So the way the votes work, and this really is due to a constraint with records, individual properties themselves are what the vote is. So if most like apartment buildings, that's like one piece of property, the owner of it will vote. But if that were like several townhomes that were all like a condo situation, those are individual parcels with individual owners. Sure. Yes. Yeah, so we'll send the postcards out, usually like a Tuesday, Wednesday or so. We try to time it such that you have a total of 6 weeks to cast your vote. Ballots will always close on a Friday, and we will always have the date that voting closes printed on that postcard.
We don't know
It'll be within a week or so of this meeting. Yeah, I mean, essentially, I'll sit down tomorrow or early next week and get this together and send it out to NDOT. Yes.
Is there, and this is just on
that's correct. Yeah, we like to have meeting one basically be where we kind of review conceptually, take more feedback. That's really the period where we consider a lot of different options to affect the design. Meeting two is mainly presenting what we came up with based on that feedback, and then voting will happen shortly afterwards.
And Carol will remind us during those 6 weeks, like remind us on Facebook about once a week. Don't forget to vote.
Water Park Community Association. But there's an old one that's not that nobody can figure out how to do. So it's the one with the green and it's a creek up there.
Do we want to move on to kind of the next steps in the program? Okay, great. So we've kind of covered a lot of this already. This says NDOT will mail postcards within 2 weeks. I'm going to try to beat that for timeliness' sake. Online balloting, that's a period of 6 weeks. The materials and install, that's what's going to wind up taking quite a while. And essentially the reason for that is there's quite a bit of backlog in NDOT's court. So some of the projects we designed, upwards of like 6 months, maybe even a year ago, they're working on those, and we don't want to shuffle any of these orders around. So as soon as the ballot passes, you will definitely be getting traffic calming eventually. It won't be the next day. It probably won't be the next week. It'll be several months in the future, but rest assured that it's in the queue, and NDOT is working feverishly to reduce the amount that's in their backlog, and then hopefully start installing these with a pretty quick turnaround. No, they do. I mean, they currently have, yeah, so I guess ordering the materials, we'll order them, but that will not be the thing they're waiting on. There's plenty of speed cushions in the warehouse. It's just a matter of the contractor's capacity to do all these projects. Yeah, no, I mean, actually, interestingly enough, I think part of the reason there was a backlog that we're like chewing on right now is that there was a period of time when we weren't able to easily get cushions. Thankfully, that has passed. We're able to order them, and they'll show up in a reasonable time frame. But it's mainly the number of projects NDOT is working on that will cause the gap in time between voting and installation. So that brings us. Oh, well, questions? Yes.
Back on the last slide, you had 4 months for ordering materials. Is that an additional 4 months after the city for the install and construct? So we're talking 8 months, we're talking for simultaneous.
I think 8 months is closer to what we can expect between voting. It's not like every order takes 4 months to get here and then they like wait 4 months. They're doing them as fast as they can and not really like waiting for anything besides themselves. So these are just kind of like big ballpark estimates on timing.
And will the weather have any impact if we get a heavy snow or anything like that?
Yeah, they're not going to install them in the snow.
Well,
But
I think we need to consider that. I mean, we have had snow in the past. With the weather being so crazy all around this nation, we never know what we're gonna have.
yeah, no, understood. When it is Percy, Warner, and Vaughn's Gap's turn to have their project installed, they will do it on the next day that's available to do it. Any other questions? Yes. Oh, you're stretching.
She was asking about how to vote. Because computers don't have time.
Oh, yeah.
Hard to
You're
tell me.
you're more than welcome to just call the number and they'll help you out. Yes.
Part of the reason, I'm not trying to make excuses, but that's what happened with our sidewalk is Nashville and NDOT and DOT, they are really backlogged in getting everything done on the sidewalk. And almost 2 years now, that we've been waiting, and they're supposed to start in this year, and hope that schedule's still gonna hold.
Yes.
So when you get the funding phase, and let's say it's a yes,
Mhm.
when would you find out and who would you contact so that we can let our neighbors know?
Oh, that's a good question. So personally, we sort of hand the implementation side off to NDOT themselves. We'll definitely tell your councilman, Tom Druffel, so he'll be able to spread the word. I'm sure that it'll make its way onto the Facebook group if it's. Got it. I think they definitely. Yeah, usually our points of contact are the applicant for the street and the council person, and between those two, the message gets communicated out to those who want to know. If there's no other questions, thank you all so much for coming. I'm happy to stick around. Cool. But yeah, y'all have an excellent night. Really appreciate you coming out.
Sorry, I can believe like go back to the slide between
Yeah, absolutely.
Highway 70 and the four-way stop.
Yeah, I might have to. So we're talking. Got it.
You're on Facebook more than anybody.
Another one? Or are we doing this one? Okay. Just so y'all know, we're going to post these on as well, right? You're welcome to take pictures. It doesn't bother me. We'll have these now.
And the meeting was recorded and it will be posted to the site.
Yeah, absolutely. Which sheet?
You already killed the recording.
No, we're recording. Yeah, I'll just talk. Which one?
Well, property.